This House now resumes its sitting. Members of the, I recognize the member for the 2nd District, Honorable Melvin Turnbull.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to give my contributions as the honorable members before me would have done thus far on the Constitutional Review Report, Commission Report of 2022-2023. And Madam Speaker, I know that we are at a critical stage in our territory where this report would have come at a time where the BVI, the Virgin Islands, were at a state in our life, in our history, where it was a bit challenging. I don't have the experience historically like some of the other members, including the member for the 3rd who spoke on last night, along with Smith, Honorable Skelton, and even Honorable Whitley, who would have had the call how things were in the Virgin Islands at particular dates and times. But Madam Speaker, what I have the ability to do and what I've had the ability to do is to listen, to learn, and to read. To understand who we are as Virgin Islanders. To appreciate where we came from. And to embed in my heart, my mind, and my entire being the type of depth and rich heritage that we have to go forward. Madam Speaker, I want to first recognize and acknowledge the commissioners of this report, which was before us. The chairman of the commission was here on last night, Mrs. Edsom, and all the commissioners that are listed that carried out this exercise. Madam Speaker, I want to recognize each one of them by name in the gallery today. I want to recognize Commissioner the Honorable Rights Charles Michael Dennis Brown, who's a consultant, Ms. Maya Barry, Ms. Noni George, Dr. Charles Whitley, Mrs. Tanya Cassie Parker, Mr. Coyle Evans, Mrs. Bernadine Louis, Dr. Steve Leonard, Ms. Suzanne Demers, Reverend Dr. Melvin A. Turnbull, who's here, a gentleman I know all my life, and he's known me all my life. Dr. Benedicta Samuels, Commissioner, the Honorable, for the time that he was there, Honorable Ronnie Skelton, Mr. Cedric Shinnery, and Mr. Roger Smith. And I want to commend them, Madam Speaker, for the work that they did, touring the territory, fielding questions, comments, having and engaging in discussions to be able to put this report together. Madam Speaker, I am going to seek your permission ahead of referring to my notes, because I need to refer to the notes that I have prepared. largely, and I'm going to be bouncing between the 1967 Constitution, the 76 Constitution, the 2007, as well as this Constitutional Review Report. So I rise today, Madam Speaker, to give first and foremost reverence to God, with gratitude for the four parents who had an unshakable love for the people of these Virgin Islands. I stand today to not speak just about the report, not just to the words printed, Madam Speaker, but to the heart of our history, to the soul of our struggle, and to the future of our children that are yet unborn. Madam Speaker, going through this report, would have done it just about 2 times, is not just about the report and the merits therein. Because if we take it on the surface, it would just seem like a technical report with pages of analysis, recommendations, comparisons. But this document and what it means is so much more than words on a paper. It's the time for us to reflect as a people of where we are. It's a window that is offering us a glimpse of where we might go, and it is also a test, challenging us to decide whether we will be timid or cautious, or bold and faithful as our ancestors were. Madam Speaker, as I look around this honorable house, this report, in its true context, did not just fall from the sky. If we're true to ourselves, this report emerged from the shadows of the Commission of Inquiry of 2021-2022. Yes, Madam Speaker. The COI, through its author, Sir Hickenbottom, highlighted corruption. It exposed maladministration. It even identified weaknesses in the systems, but the COI did not do, which was equally as important. It did not give the proper credence, the proper credit to the achievements of the Virgin Islands and its people. The COI, Madam Speaker, painted us as in colors of scandal, but it did not show the canvas of our progress. It told of what was broken, but it did not tell of what was built. It cataloged our flaws, but it did not chronicle our faith. And so the CRC was appointed in part to respond to that critique. But Madam Speaker, to do what we have always done in the Virgin Islands and as Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islanders, we take and have taken external pressure and continue to turn it into purpose. This is not the first time, Madam Speaker, that outsiders have looked at us and seen only the weaknesses. In 1949, our people marched to this very house. The colonial administrators saw them as agitators, but we know them as visionaries. They demanded representation not because it was fashionable, but because it was right. In 1967, when the Virgin Islands Constitutional Order, SI 1967-2249, reintroduced ministerial government. This is this document here, Madam Speaker. The United Kingdom had no intention for it to be a gift of sovereignty. They had an intention of a modern or modest concession, but our leaders seized the opportunity nevertheless. Mr. Speaker, if you look back in the history, these were leaders that didn't have all the education. They didn't have all the degrees, but they had the understanding and a purpose and a faith to know where and what they wanted to achieve. In the 1976 Constitution, Madam Speaker, then leaders replaced the administrator with a governor and created the office of Chief Minister, which is in Section 24 of the 1976 Constitution. That indeed, Madam Speaker, you heard from the Honorable Premier and the Honorable Leader of Opposition, the Honorable Deputy Premier, sorry, Madam Speaker, changing from an administrator to a Chief Minister. That in itself was a great change. And then the document which I will spend most of my time, Madam Speaker, and even reading parts of it to bring context, is in the 2007 Constitutional Order. That is a premier, a cabinet, of assembly, Madam Speaker, which is captured in the Virgin Islands Constitution from sections 9 to 34. Gives the Virgin Islands people the list of rights. So from 1967 to 76, then to 2007, each generation, Madam Speaker, of leaders advanced the frontier of self-government, not timidity, not fearfully, but boldly in faith and in unity. And I will declare that my purpose in this debate, Madam Speaker, is to honor the progress of those leaders that came before us of 1967, 76, and 2007. My purpose is also to critique, in some ways, what I would regard as the areas that the commissioners were a little bit careful while affirming value. Madam Speaker, I want to demand bold reforms that put the people first in education, in land, in healthcare, and governance. But above all, I want to remind this House of Assembly and the people in the territory of the Virgin Islands must not be defined by what outsiders say, but we must be defined as a people of faith, courage, and who choose to say and tell our story on our own behalf. So in 1967, Madam Speaker, before we can decide where to go, we must remember where we came from. Before we can chart a future, we must honor the road of our people who have already walked. And too often, Madam Speaker, in this fast pace that we have in this territory, when we speak about the Virgin Islands and we speak about its advancements, we lose. As I said this morning at the Bruce Bay Community Center opening, the George W. Christopher Community Center open, we lose the cultural aspects, we lose the historical aspects, those nuggets that our children have to hold on to. So when we chase these revenues and we chase these numbers, Madam Speaker, we sometimes don't tell the full stories. But the history, Madam Speaker, we need to speak as though our story began from where it began, and not that it began from a place of scandal, because the narrative that exists now is that it is one of corruption. If you start from 2021, they're about to 22 coming forward. Every report coming from the UK is one of corruption and scandal, and we're not enough. But this story did not begin with scandal. It certainly didn't begin in London. Madam Speaker, the story of the Virgin Islands, based on my research and my reading, years of being around this territory and hearing from elders in this country, is one has been deliberate, it has been courageous, and we have pushed ahead. Any gifts from the United I said this in I think it was 2017 after the hurricanes. We were at our worst point, Madam Speaker, after the hurricanes of 2017. Where territories and other nations who were much less damaged than we were received all sorts of resources, financial and otherwise. Our first gift, Madam Speaker, was about 5,000 body bags. The second gift, Madam Speaker, was to tell us that despite of what we see physically, because they came, our GDP was still too high to receive assistance. Madam Speaker, September 6th just passed. And every September 6th, I don't know whether it's a blessing or a curse, but Facebook reminds you of the history of what happened years prior. And every September 6th, that reminds me and takes me back to 2017. There was nothing in the Virgin Islands to look at in terms of infrastructure. So I don't know how they could be talking about GDP when we had none here. Except a people that went back to that foundational backdrop of leaning on God and taking care of each other. Madam Speaker, in 1967, the Virgin Islands Constitution was proclaimed for the first time in modern memory. Virgin Islands were able to elect representatives who could hold ministerial portfolios. But to be absolutely clear, Madam Speaker, it had some limitations. The head of government was not a premier or a chief minister, but it was an administrator, appointed by the Queen holding ultimate authority. The Executive Council, Madam Speaker, included members, yes, but always under the shadow of our administrator's veto. The Legislative Council existed, but the United Kingdom reserved the right to make laws for peace, order, and good government for the Virgin Islands. Madam Speaker, it was progress, but it was progress wrapped in caution, overshadowed by colonial control. And yet, our leaders of that time did not despise the day for small beginnings. They took the 1967 framework and used it as a training ground. They built ministries, they gained experience in governance, they began to speak with confidence of leaders who knew that more was possible. And they knew that what they had was enough. So, Madam Speaker, we remember names like Isaac Glanville Fonseca, who fought tirelessly for constitutional reform, Carlton de Castro, Q.W. Osborne, and others who carried the burden of political leadership when resources were scarce and recognition was even rarer. That Constitution of 1967, Madam Speaker, was not perfect, but it was a seed. And from that seed, a tree of self-government began to grow. Madam Speaker, we must always remember our beginnings. because we could never despise small beginnings. In them, the courage for our foreparents was already at work. We turn now to the 1976 Constitution. Go from the seed to the stem and the branches, Madam Speaker, as I have it here in my notes. Less than a decade later, this tree started to grow tall because we had confidence. This was no minor adjustment. It was a significant leap forward because in the 1976 Constitution, the administrator was replaced with a governor, which is in Part 3, Section 4 of the 1976 order. Even though they're still appointed by the Crown, but it had clearer limitations. For the first time, Madam Speaker, the office of the Chief Minister was created in Section 24, Part 4, a Virgin Islander elected by the people's representatives, holding executive office authority to lead the people. The office of the leader of the opposition was established in the 1976 order, affirming that dissent and debate are essential to democracy. The number of ministers expanded, giving the Virgin Islands more responsibility in shaping their policy and political future. Madam Speaker, this was a moment when the center of the political gravity shifted from London's appointee to Virgin Islanders' chosen leaders. And the timing, given the historical context, it was providential, for in the late 1970s and early 80s, the Virgin Islands began to lay the foundations for its modern economy. Tourism was expanding. Cruise ships were arriving, hotels, guests rising, chartered industries and yachts anchoring in our bays. The financial services industry was emerging, first in modest form, but soon to grow into this global pillar, Madam Speaker. The infrastructure started to develop, roads started to be paved, electricity extended. My father's here in the gallery, Madam Speaker. When I grew up, I'm glad they tell me the truth about what was going on. Because when we were younger, I don't know, Rema, you remember this kind of story, and they telling us about they ain't had no current. They ain't had no current back in the day, and you had kerosene, this and kerosene and flammable to walk. And in our minds, we thought, what kind of stripping is it down? How are we going to live without electricity? Outhousing thing. Are you saying I'm going to outhouse? I might have dead. But education was advancing, Madam Speaker. You had scholarships abroad. And then you had the seeds that would later become the H. Lavity Stowe Community College. But Madam Speaker, all of that to say you had visionary leadership. So the 1976 Constitution gave the Virgin Islands the political instruments to match their economic ambition. It gave the Chief Minister who could stand and say, I speak for the Virgin Islands. So we must never underestimate the courage of those leaders. They did not accept the narrative that small size meant small destiny. They did not bow to the idea that the population of 1,000 people meant permanent dependency. They demanded change and they seized it at every single opportunity. That, Madam Speaker, I believe was boldness and that was faith. And now we come to what we have before us today, Madam Speaker, which is the 2007 Constitutional Order, where we were able to, from the seed, from the trees and the stems, we start to see some fruits. In the early 2000s, Madam Speaker, the Virgin Islands were no longer an neglected territory. We started to be recognized on the International Financial Center. And that stage where we were playing, Madam Speaker, with the rest of the world, but we weren't just playing, we were competing at the top. We were a premier tourist destination, punching well above our weight, as the late Dr. Mack used to say. But some reason or the next, whatever it be, we are here now. The Constitution lagged behind, and so in 2007, after consultation and negotiations, we got this 2007 Constitution enacted. So this was transformation, Madam Speaker. In Part 5, Section 52 of the Constitution, the office of the Premier was created and replaced what was existing the Chief Minister. The Cabinet was formalized as well in Part 6, Section 47, which also included the Attorney General to anchor decisions in law. Madam Speaker, the House of Assembly was also created to replace the then Legislative Council, expanding representation throughout the Virgin Islands. What I spoke about earlier in Chapter 2 of this Constitution, Madam Speaker, we established a Bill of Rights from Section 9 to 34. And Madam Speaker, sometimes we don't read. Sometimes we don't take the time to understand. The Virgin Islands Constitutional Order 2007, in Chapter 2 on page 8, gives the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual Virgin Islander. 9 has A through C, where every person in the Virgin Islands is entitled to fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual. Whereas those fundamental rights and freedoms are enjoyed without distinction of any, such as sex, color, language, religion, political or other opinion, national, ethnic or social origin, association with a national minority, property, family, relations, economic status, disability, age, birth, sex orientation, marital status, or subject only to the prescribed limitations. But Madam Speaker, it goes to say, it is recognized that those rights and freedoms apply, subject to the respect for rights and freedom of others and public interest to each and every following individual, namely for life, equality, liberty, security of the person and the protection of the law, freedom of conscience, expression, movement, assembly, and association, protection for private and family life, the privacy of the home and the property, from deprivation of property save in the public interest on the payment of fair compensation. Then it goes all the others from 9 to 32. It gives interpretations, right of life, equality before the law, protection of inhumane treatment, protection from slavery and forced labor, protection for the rights of personal liberty, protection to secure protection of the law, protection of the right of prisoners to humane treatment, protection of freedom of movement, all the way to 36, Madam Speaker. These were the rights and freedoms established in the 2007 Constitutional Order. It also introduced new institutions Like the Complaints Commissioner, in Section 110, the Director of Public Prosecutions came in Section 95. The Register of Interest was introduced in Section 112. Stronger judicial, legal, teaching, and police service commissions were also introduced in Sections 91 to 94. But importantly, Madam Speaker, in addition to all those, the Constitution formally recognized the Virgin Islander, Section 65, affirming what the member for the Deputy Premier spoke about, the ancestral identity and belonging. So, Madam Speaker, this not just gave governance, it was about dignity, it was about saying to the world that we are a people with rights, with institutions, with identities, and with vision. But, Madam Speaker, what did all these constitutional steps thus far mean for daily life? When I asked myself the question, I put myself into this picture, Madam Speaker, because 46 years of being, I think it's about 9, thereabout, or 10 generations from the plantation as a Virgin Islander. And looking and hearing all this history, what advancement meant to me, Madam Speaker. Coming from a slave plantation, coming from a place that we were oppressed, coming from a place that we were treated less than half of a human being. These advancements, Madam Speaker, meant that our people could own their own land and security in law. Our young people could be educated at home, then abroad, and return to build businesses. It meant to me, Madam Speaker, that our economy could be diversified beyond fishing and farming to financial services and tourism. That our public service could be expanded with teachers, nurses, police, civil servants, and others empowered, and that our society could be modernized with ports, electricity, and communications. Madam Speaker, as we are approaching the 75 years that we celebrate, our ability to legislate and have this House of Assembly where men and women would have paved this road for us, Madam Speaker. We must not forget where it started. We went from a neglected colony with no secondary school, no paved roads, and little economic home, to a territory that manages billions with a B in global finance, hosts yachts and cruise ships, and sends its children to university across the world. Madam Speaker, that is triumph. That is progress. That is the fruit as a result of the constitutional order and advancements from 67 to 76 and then to 2007. So in summary, Madam Speaker, 67 gave us the seed of self-government. 76 gave us the stem and branches. 2007 gave us the fruit of our maturity. Each stage, as was said before, Madam Speaker, of these advancements, I used to hear the portion that I heard most echo it in this honorable house for the time that I've been here. Honorable Skelton would say every single time that we got an opportunity to advance our Constitution, to level across the board of the Virgin Islanders, the economy, the society, the education, it rose, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, you might be asking why I taking so much time? Why am I taking so much time to go through this? I'm taking so much time to go through this, Madam Speaker, because the story that is being told wants to bury this history and just paint a picture that we are corrupt, that we are not good enough, Madam Speaker, that because of the COI, the things that have been pointed out which were wrong, shape and should shape the future of the Virgin Islands, that we should continue to accept. That we are not enough. Madam Speaker, somebody say if you don't study history, it will repeat itself. That's how the code goes. If you don't pay attention to history, it will repeat itself. Let me, my understanding of that. We didn't have much before 67. We had an administrator who was responsible for everything. 67, we move forward to Chief Minister 76. We come forward with ministers. 2007, we move out administrator, get rid of all of that. We have premier and ministers. So how come after the COI and after the incidents of April 2022, the immediate first thing that the United Kingdom proposed was to suspend our constitution where one person was left to be in charge? You don't pay attention to history. It will repeat itself. And Madam Speaker, I was glad. People say what they want. But I was glad to be in a position in 2022 to fight for what I understood then to be something that didn't belong to me, which was the rights, the freedoms, and the advancements of this country, and not let it take a step backwards where we were considered nothing and left to dead because they believe, Madam Speaker, that they can control and do everything themselves. It didn't work then. And we had leaders, Madam Speaker, without the education that we had who fought to advance it. And Madam Speaker, we are here with bachelor's and master's and doctorate degree and engineering and architects and all of that. Madam Speaker, we're going to fight for this country. Because my motto, Madam Speaker, thus far in this honorable house, every governor I've met and had the opportunity to speak to, I tell them one thing. Governor, nice to meet you, Your Excellency. My name is Melvin Mitch Turnbull. I am a proud Virgin Islander. And my position is simply this. Anything or anyone that gets in the way or threatens the advancement and development of the Virgin Islands and its people become my enemy, and I don't think you want to be an enemy of mine because I won't stop until you are destroyed. So the Constitutional Review report, Madam Speaker, it did not come as a result of us doing what we wanted to do it, but we did in 2007. Should have been 10 years thereabout before we did the next one, which would have been 2017. But we did not end up doing the constitutional review on our terms. It was recommended as a part of the COI that we do it. But even though it was done under those circumstances, Madam Speaker, the men and women that stood and led this exercise understood even more of the history that I was able to capture here today. They understood the rights that we were fighting for. They understood that, yes, they had to take in considerations and comments and recommendations and positions and thoughts and ideas from everyone, but what they were presenting couldn't be something that destroyed this territory. So the COI, Madam Speaker, examined the Virgin Islands with a forensic eye. It scored cabinet decisions. It reviewed land transactions. It studied statutory boards. It investigated governance. And even, Madam Speaker, the COI report, it was unrelenting in its criticisms. It portrayed us as corrupt. It portrayed us as incompetent. It portrayed us as incapable of governing ourselves without external supervision. Madam Speaker, there were failures to expose, but the COI did something deeply unjust. It reduced these Virgin Islands to all its faults. It told the world that only things were wrong with the Virgin Islands and wrong with us, but it did not tell the truth about what was right with us. It did not speak of our people's resilience after hurricanes. It did not honor our global leadership in the financial services era or arena. It did not credit our people for building schools, for educating a generation, for owning their lands and their homes and their businesses. It did not tell the story, Madam Speaker, of this very progress of our Virgin Islands people. The COI gave us a diagnosis of doom, but did not allow the people to understand the full history of the Virgin Islands. So, Madam Speaker, traveling throughout these Virgin Islands, the CRC held public meetings and received, according to page 8 on chapter 1, Madam Speaker, it spoke about receiving 170 written submissions and nearly 300 oral submissions. Consulted Virgin Islands abroad and locally. It produced a detailed report that we have before us today, some 303 pages, Madam Speaker, with additional amendments or addendums to the document. Madam Speaker, again, I commend them for working diligently. They listened and they summarized to the best possible conclusion what was captured and made recommendations, and this report is a very serious and thought out document. But as I said earlier, Madam Speaker, the report has some areas where I believe, I would coin them, where the commissioners were very bold in their recommendations and declarations, and in some areas, I challenge the very letter of this document that some areas were quite timid, quite cautious, quite careful. And Madam Speaker, I question at points, I even, the chairman is here together with Reverend Dr. Turnbull is here as well, and I question the document to understand, questioning why certain things were unsaid, why certain things were left to interpretation. But context is always important, Madam Speaker, because the time that we were in, everybody was trying to be as cautious and careful as they were, not wanting to upset, quote unquote, the apple cart. It was not very too long ago, Madam Speaker, I go back to 2017. The BVI's economy was destroyed. Infrastructure was destroyed. I think over some $4 billion, I think we had quoted in the damages. And then the United Kingdom said to us, through a high-level framework document, we are going to provide you with the opportunity to build back through a loan that you have to take, but we're going back. And the conditions under this loan, you're responsible for. And my thing has been, Madam Speaker, because in this 2007 Constitution, it talks about a modern partnership. But because it's so old now, we passed that. You're either going to be my partner or you're going to decide where you stand with me. And if you don't need to decide, I'm going to make a decision. Because I'm going to tell you where I stand. Because you can't tell me you're trying to help me and put me in a position where I'm unable to help myself. And they do just enough. And when they do whatever they do to quote-unquote help, Madam Speaker, it is quantified in numbers. We have sent this person and that person, and we have sent these amount of resources, and this equates to about this amount of pounds or dollars. Madam Speaker, if I need money, I go down the street. Madam Speaker, if I go down the road and I'm hungry, I tell you I hungry me for 3 days, and you as my friend in a modern partnership, I depending on you, you know. I depending on you. And you will tell me, don't worry, I'm sending something for you. And you send a man come counsel me about what food should taste like. That's because in a clout you want. Clout is parliamentary. A thumb. You ain't trying to help me. Madam Speaker, you go. If you're going to help me, Madam Speaker, the Bible says, ask, seek, and knock. I'm telling you, I'm asking you for help. I need money, and you're going to give me people to contact me to debt. So, Madam Speaker, the CRC was bold in the following areas that I captured, and I don't plan to go through the entire document, Madam Speaker, because members will have their own parts that they take out of it. But what I have, Madam Speaker, it was bold in the independence of its institutions, recommending that bodies like the Auditor General, Director of Complaints Commissioner, and the proposed Human Rights Commission be granted administrative and financial independence, which is found on the CRC report, chapter 3. In my book, it is on recommendation 4, page 55 and 56. And I believe they put it in there because without the secure funding for these institutions, the independence of them become an illusion. The Integrity Commission, Madam Speaker, the Integrity Commission, Commissioner and Contractor General, it was insisted that the Integrity in Public Life Act 2021 and the Contractor General Act be brought into force immediately, which was recommendation number 5. These bodies currently exist in law but not in practice. So the CRC demanded that their activation to help fight against corruption. Notice the word. Freedom of Information Act. Bold, Madam Speaker. And they suggested, Madam Speaker, in this call for the Freedom of Information Act, that we embedded the right of access to the information in the Constitution. That's in recommendation 7. This now, Madam Speaker, forces us to become more transparent. It allows persons to understand that the government information belongs to the government, which is the people. Not those of us elected or those of us who hold offices that we feel that we could cover up things when it comes to the people's money. The Human Rights Commission was also recommended making it mandatory for it to come in place, which under the 2007 Constitution, Madam Speaker, it was just there, but it seemed to be optional, and this is bold because it strengthens rights and enforcement. Madam Speaker, I think when we were here on Tuesday, I was speaking and asking the questions of the Minister of Health regarding the juveniles, while we're still to this day placing juveniles at His Majesty's prison, and there's no recourse for this violation of the Constitution because, Madam Speaker, there's no Human Rights Commission. There needs to be some place that I could go and declare my grievances, Madam Speaker. It spoke to electoral reform. It also asks, Madam Speaker, for the growing population, the need to ensure that there's fairer representation. Madam Speaker, that I have as a string, but you will see it repeated as something that I wasn't sure because I didn't go into the details. That's in the recommendation 11 on chapter 2. Madam Speaker, these were what I highlighted as the bold and progressive recommendations. They honor our tradition in moving forward based on what happened in 67 to 76 to 2007 and where we're going now. But in contrast, Madam Speaker, I want to also challenge this document and highlight areas that I believe the report were a little bit timid in certain areas. When it comes to the reserve powers and the governor, the CRC acknowledged that too much power rests with the governor in external affairs and internal security and aspect of the public service. But instead of recommending the transfer, it suggested clearer frameworks or consultations. That's recommendation 17. Madam Speaker, what I've learned about the law, by no way a lawyer, I have a lawyer on my right in the opposition, one across from me in the Attorney General, but what I've learned about this law and consultation simply mean I tell you something and I gone. Whether you respond, agree or not, I consult. Did the opposition, I'm correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So if I tell you, Honorable Meta, I think I'm going to put you in charge of this. I think I consult you. I ain't leave you with no instructions, with no authority, with no framework, nothing. But I consult you. Madam Speaker, consultation is not sovereignty. At some point, Virgin Islanders must, and I repeat, must hold the pen, not only in comment, and not only in draft form. We got to hold the pen. Madam Speaker, H.L. Stout passed away and left this territory as our visionary leader in 1995. he requested and demanded and fought for Virgin Islanders to be educated, for Virgin Islanders to leave this territory and to be educated and trained and get experience, to come back to lead. Madam Speaker, and when they came back, he ensured, Madam Speaker, as a leader, as a visionary, he ensured that the position held by other peoples. He tapped him on the shoulder. This is the consult. This is the fact. This is how we need to be consulting people. Mr. So-and-so, you know you've been here for a little 2 years. I have Smitty Boy from over King Anime. He on the way back to school. So what I want you to do is pack up your wallis in 6 months, because when Smitty come back, he in charge. Madam Speaker, what we have held on to is the educating of our people. We're doing a good job in that. We're educating them to life. But when them come back, we move in a soul because we like Mr. So-and-so and Mrs. So-and-so, and they've been our friend, we having tea and wine and cheese with them. This is our Virgin Islands. How are you going to be bold and timid at the same time? That means you ain't going nowhere. When we look at other places in the Caribbean, and I go in there, man, and speak, I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk it the way I feel it. Our labor force in the Virgin Islands is about 19,000 persons. We have a situation where every single year out of the high schools of this territory, we're graduating upwards of 400 or 500 people. Every year. And I've been back home since 2005. Not talking about those persons who want to come home from college. Before, when you were on bond from government scholarship, you had to come back home. And if the government can't find a job for you, then you had the option to go in the private sector and find stuff to do. But, Madam Speaker, we've become so creative to holding on to what doesn't belong to us that we find, what do we call them? Not statutory bodies. We find these bodies and these entities that expand and expand and expand. So you're supposed to go where you're going now. But now you're consulting or you're advising at this and that. Madam Speaker, what were we preparing for the future? How is it, Madam Speaker, you building a territory for future Virgin Islanders, and when they come back home, you're telling me you're going to speak for them? That's not what I understand HL Stout to be doing. So we're holding on to piece of the vision and leaving another piece drag. Madam Speaker, on independence and self-determination, the CRC recommended more public education, but no public roadmap, no benchmarks, no timelines. And I understood, Madam Speaker, that education is vital, but it is our leaders in 67. If they had waited until every Virgin Islander had a political science degree, we would still have an administrator. So education is important. But it then ties into the truest form of leadership, Madam Speaker, which again we have gotten away from. Leadership in its truest form, Madam Speaker, operates on 4 simple principles. Vision. An idea to see where you're going. Decision to make up your mind that you're going where you say you're going. Passion, which invigorates and educates and inspires the people that you are leading to buy into the vision and the decision of where you're going. And the fourth one is the discipline, Madam Speaker, to actually go where you say you're going. But we simply want to be going here, there, and everywhere, depending on what's happening to us on the day of the week. Because, Madam Speaker, I've been in this house for a little while. And when I didn't hear who is subject, who is object. When I didn't hear the UK trying to kill us, then the UK is our friend. We need to keep them close. Madam Speaker, what we're doing, you need to keep the people who you're leading close. And right now, Madam Speaker, we've been losing that battle. Because everything said about the Virgin Islands and the leaders of this territory matters, because 9 times out of 10 is a negative something. And we help in the narrative. But if we're going to lead our people down the road, Madam Speaker, we have to set the example. We have to ensure that the systems are in place. We have to go back if we need to and understand how they got from 67 to 76, from 76 to 2007, and start to pull on those strengths, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Honorable Deputy Premier touched on he touched on the area that dealt with the referendum by the people and term limits. And he gave a context that I appreciated so much, Honorable Deputy Premier, in terms of depending on what people are going through at the time. So depending on what you're feeling at the time, they said, get rid of district reps, get more at large, or get rid of the at large and have more district reps, Madam Speaker. What is the plan? What are we trying to achieve? And one of the things, Madam Speaker, in this particular aspect that we have not done, because I was here in 2015, and I want to believe, Honorable Skelton, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think Honorable might have been Dolores and Honorable Christopher would have been appointed the first 2 junior ministers, right? 2020, during that 2011 to 2014 term. Honorable Christian and Honorable Christopher. But Madam Speaker, that is an advancement. Because now you have the junior minister, I don't mean to point at you, but you have the junior minister of financial services and the junior minister of tourism. But, Madam Speaker, to this day, I remember coming here in 2015 and hearing us talk about setting out clearer guidelines for what it means to be a junior minister. Even to the part, Madam Speaker, that we didn't even know what we wanted it to mean. Even to now, Madam Speaker, in 2025, Honorable Smith, Honorable Lusab Smith as well, are junior ministers. But Madam Speaker, from 2013, 14, or when we started to 2025, what are they really responsible for? No, what are they really responsible for, Madam Speaker? You ask for a thing, you get a thing. Man, strengthen the thing. Strengthen it so I can know that you have a junior minister of tourism, they have the ability to do what a minister do, because here's the thing. In the Constitution itself, and in the standing orders, they're considered ministers, so none of them could serve as deputy speaker. So you're advancing positions and titles without increasing the capabilities of those positions and titles, and find yourself crippled because you have a constitution that says certain things can't happen because they're considered ministers. No, if you're going to give me responsibility, give to me. I used to have a little friend. He ain't like nothing more than a Jolly Rancher. He said, give to me, I want it. It's ours, Madam Speaker. Let us clearly take the time to define these things so nobody ain't defining it for us. I don't want another man, Jack, Jill, or Jane come back here and come tell us what we know we're supposed to be doing. So, Madam Speaker, those are the areas that I looked at to point out the contrast in the boldness and what I believe was timidity. Because where I started is, if you're going to go for something, you got to go for it. You can't make excuses, man, and that's what we find ourselves making, a lot of excuses. And I've learned a long time ago that excuses are nothing but tools of the incompetent. We got to get to a place where we are serious, Madam Speaker, and serious in a holistic aspect. Every age, Madam Speaker, and every step of the advancements of this territory has been done without hesitation, not accepting excuses, Madam Speaker, and not settling for half measures. So I would say, Madam Speaker, the time for us to do what is needed, Madam Speaker, we have this ability. Some of us may never get this opportunity again. There are three or four members in this honorable house, two, who were part of the 2007 negotiations. And they have been granted by the people of the Virgin Islands the opportunity to be here at this stage again for what would hopefully be the, I don't know if it's the 2027 Constitution. Madam Speaker, the time to act is now. The time to educate is now, Madam Speaker. We can't allow another 17 years, another 18 years to pass from this one. So, Madam Speaker, I believe what we should be doing at this time is shaping this 2027 or this new Constitution to speak at least for 20 years ahead. And because if we don't, Madam Speaker, what the COI told the world was that we were unfit to govern. But we approach it with the boldness that is in our veins, Madam Speaker, is in our DNA. We can flip that very script and show that while we acknowledge our faults, we also embrace our faith, that we see our weaknesses, but we also know that our willpower and our unity will be enough to claim our future. Madam Speaker, the choice belongs to us here in the Virgin Islands. This report allows us the opportunity to have a springboard for a step forward and a leap forward. This is the challenge before us in this honorable house, and Madam Speaker, I believe we must push forward further. On the recommendation? Okay, I will, sorry. Madam Speaker, we must push forward. In this report, Madam Speaker, the clarifying of rules and protecting the people and preparing this path is a section that we must pay attention to. So as we chart the next steps forward, we have to be clear about the responsibilities, about the roles of who will govern these Virgin Islands and who will govern in these Virgin Islands. We can't afford to have confusion. The governor, Madam Speaker, is the representative of the United Kingdom. His duty is to safeguard the interests of the United Kingdom. That is his mandate. But the people of the Virgin Islands did not elect the governor. They elected us, 13 members in this honorable house. And we are the ones that must be accountable to the people. We are the ones that must fight and stand up on behalf of the people of these Virgin Islands. Madam Speaker, our system constantly requires a balancing act. Have an opportunity to be, I coin it the cupboard, but I had an opportunity to be in the cabinet where this balancing act happens, where decisions are sometimes forced between London's preferences and the will of the elected representatives. We see it here in this house, where policies demanded from abroad may clash with the voices of the people at home. This is not a healthy arrangement, Madam Speaker. This is not democracy in its truest form. And that is why this constitutional reform must ensure that the will of the Virgin Islands people, expressed through their elected representative, is not consistently overruled by the external authority. Madam Speaker, we will all agree, and I strongly agree, for the need to safeguard and strengthen institutions. We agree that the Auditor General, the Director of Public Prosecutions, they must have strength, independence, protection from political interference. They must be able to pursue corruption fearlessly, investigate wrongdoings impartially, and hold government to account. But, Madam Speaker, they cannot, at the same time, have the ability to become a law unto themselves and abuse the power that we are giving to them, because they can't be about you. It has to be about the development of this country and its people. Independence does not mean impunity, Madam Speaker. Strength does not mean a blank check. We must place the constitutional safeguards to ensure that these offices do not be abused, that people do not become victimized to settle scores and feed a narrative of corruption that unfairly continues to tar the Virgin Islands and the stalls of its progress. Madam Speaker, unchecked power, even in the name of integrity, can become a tyranny. If a DPP, Madam Speaker, or Auditor General can act without accountability, casting aspersions or manipulating investigations, then we have not created justice. We have just created another form of injustice and made it legal to do so. So, Madam Speaker, one of the things that I recommend, and I will point to an example, and this has nothing to do with the individual, it has to do with the office. We found ourselves in 2022 in a situation that the Virgin Islands would have never been in before. The Attorney General is elected by the members of the House of Assembly, or appointed, sorry, I used the wrong word. The Speaker is elected by the members of the House of Assembly. The Attorney General, Madam Speaker, is the legal authority. The Attorney General serves on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands. But the Attorney General, in their office, found themselves in a difficult position. And the territory also found itself in a difficult position. What am I talking about? Madam Speaker, during the COI, you had what the UK was doing, what the Cabinet was doing, and what members of the House Assembly were doing. And the Attorney General was forced to be the balancing act between three different entities. What do we do in the Constitution to address a situation like that? That's a question we need to ask. But now we have the time to address it and make it and place it in a way that serves the people of this territory. Madam Speaker, we cannot debate constitutional reform just in abstract. It has to be about real people, about real situations. When we speak about land and young Virgin Islanders owning land, Madam Speaker, I think about young persons from my constituency in primary school. I think about young who will become professional athletes, who will become the future leaders of tomorrow, Madam Speaker, who are dreaming of owning their own home, but for some reason, we continue to allow the market rate of this territory to rise beyond our reach. So, Madam Speaker, where there were policies created for young Virgin Islands to be able to own their own land, and the government provided for them because it was all land, it was Virgin Islands land, Madam Speaker, now we are in a situation that is becoming more difficult. More and more difficult, Madam Speaker. And if this land belongs to us, Madam Speaker, then we should show that we have some sort of control of it. When we speak about fishing, again, Bruce Bay, King Island Bay, Bargos Bay, East End, the fishermen all over this place, Madam Speaker. What are we doing to protect an industry like that in the Constitution? Because these same fishermen have been telling us for the last 20 plus years that when they go out on a job, and even further, Madam Speaker, they are seeing poachers, they are seeing persons who don't have a license to be in our territory, taking up our fish, and then 2-3 weeks later we buy it in the supermarket, come in a container. The land belongs to us. The ocean is ours. These industries, Madam Speaker, is what got 67 to 76 to 2007. While our focus would have been to develop financial services and tourism, Madam Speaker, you can't ignore the natural resources. It's time we put some attention towards those things and protect and preserve them. Madam Speaker, when we talk about healthcare, our seniors, our elders that build this territory, who also deserve pensions and proper care and dignity. These are things, Madam Speaker, that we make sure in our Constitution systems are developed to not just talk about them, Madam Speaker, but it becomes a way of life. That as a senior in this territory, after you become the age of 65, and if you would have contributed towards working in the government system, Madam Speaker, there is something set aside for you that when you retire, you can have a life of dignity. Not, Madam Speaker, where when you retire, some 20 and 30 years ago, and I remember, Madam Speaker, God rest her soul, my dear lady Adrina Lloyd, tell me, I worked in the hospital for 18 years and 6 months. And when I leave because my foot was mashed up, I collect $1,200 a month. And you know how long I stopped working? Over 20 years ago. And that should be able to take care of me. When you have public officers, Madam Speaker, in this system that we're supposed to be transforming, none of the thing on WD-40, they screw them loose. Transforming, Madam Speaker, and you telling me to this day, if a public officer who would have retired because they would have attained 25 years in the service, they come back on contract or come back on consultancy or come back on whatever the case may be, you're telling them when it's time to retire, they're going back to the salary when they retired 10, 15 years ago? And you telling me you studying? And I telling you that I studied when I came back to the Virgin Islands. And I did actual study to show you what you need to do. PwC did one. Clarence Faulkner and his company PRMI did one. And you telling me now, Madam Speaker, you're telling pensioners and seniors in this territory that you're going to study again? Simple things, Madam Speaker, we shouldn't be having conversations about. Madam Speaker, I am in full support of constitutional reforms that touch on education, that touch on land, that touch on food security, that touch on health care, and touch on pensions, Madam Speaker. But more insistently, that we leave this place and leave the space in the house for the voices of our people. For us to name in their names, for us to tell their stories, to ensure that this debate is not just about law, but is more about life. Self-determination, Madam Speaker, when we hear, we get scared sometimes. But it has to be steady. It can't be reckless. It can't be a reckless approach to it. Because you can't tell me you want me to follow you down this road, and every step of the way, when you're supposed to be responsible for these things, for me to trust you, you make a mistake here, a mistake there, then there's excuse here, excuse there, and everywhere. Madam Speaker, we have to envelope the trust from our people and in our people. We have to do it, Madam Speaker. That's why we were elected. We have to strengthen the systems. We have to strengthen the institutions, Madam Speaker. I'm glad we're going down this road, Madam Speaker, to take this House of Assembly independent, Madam Speaker. But we have to strengthen the institutions and the systems that exist. And can't just keep passing the buck. We got to be responsible. Madam Speaker, independence cannot and must not be the project of 13 members dragging 34,000 people along. That is not leadership. That would be dictatorship, and it would be utter foolishness. This road to self-determination, Madam Speaker, must be walked with the people step by step, clearly explained, broadly supported. The young must be motivated. The elders must be celebrated. The whole population, Madam Speaker, must be eager and anticipating, not anxious and divided. That is why I've invoked, Madam Speaker, in the name of Noah Lloyd, a man of courage who stood against injustice in his time. Madam Speaker, before we walk down the road of independence, we must first ensure that we secure the basics. Secure education, health care, land ownership, fair pensions, Madam Speaker, food security, transparent institutions, proper infrastructure, Madam Speaker, basic needs like water. Because if we cannot guarantee these, Madam Speaker, then the talk of independence is premature. But I also want to be clear, Madam Speaker. I don't believe that fixing these things and implementing these systems are impossible. Yes, we have had setbacks. Yes, we've had some shortfalls. Yes, we've had even some failures, Madam Speaker. But setbacks are never the end of a story, Madam Speaker, once you're willing to stay committed. God has a sense of humor, Madam Speaker. Because I didn't know this was going to play out like this. So let me just do it this way. Madam Speaker, a wise man once said, every setback is a setup for a comeback. We have been set back. Some caused by us, some imposed on us. But delay, Madam Speaker, does not mean denial. The Virgin Islands, Madam Speaker, as a people, when leaders understand that they are not leaders of their own right, but they're leaders of a people who put trust and confidence in them, remember that their first calling is to the people. When nation builders, Madam Speaker, from the different areas of the economy can stand together and respect the leaders, when we once again, Madam Speaker, invoke and ensure that industries and our religious leaders, Madam Speaker, and our young people, Madam Speaker, and our athletes are all a part of what we want to achieve, when they buy into that vision, we could walk down this road. But Madam Speaker, walking down the road by yourself doesn't mean anything. We are stronger together. Madam Speaker, those persons that marched down that road in 1949, their strength came not from selfishness, but from solidarity. Not from division, but unity, because they understood where they wanted to go. So my vision, Madam Speaker, for the next 20 to 30 years for these Virgin Islands, I believe, is simple. The young must be educated and motivated. The elders will be celebrated and cared for. Fishermen and farmers will be empowered. Families will own their homes and land, Madam Speaker. Our institutions will be strong, fair, and safe. And the people of the Virgin Islands will once again be united in purpose, walking steadily towards a destiny clearly articulated, a destiny of justice, dignity, and shared prosperity. Madam Speaker, I've honored the past, and we continue to honor the past. We've examined the Constitutional Review Report. We've seen where it's been bold, where it's been timid. We've seen where it needs to be strengthened, Madam Speaker. Now the question comes to us in this honorable house: where do we go as Virgin Islanders from here? Do we hide behind timidity, or do we push with fervent determination and will? For me, Madam Speaker, the answer is clear. We must push further, for history will teach us. No generation of Virgin Islanders has ever advanced by lowering their sights. No generation ever honored its ancestors by shrinking from the fight. And Madam Speaker, I declare that with conviction, education, land governance, economy, healthcare, resilience, and self-determination, they have to be the pillars of our constitutional future. Madam Speaker, in the report on Chapter 3, it asks for the same stronger protection of our rights, which again is covered in the Virgin Island Constitutional Order of 2007, 9-34. We must ensure that we enshrine in our Constitution the right to free primary, secondary education guaranteed for every Virgin Islander child. Madam Speaker, we ain't making less children. The population ain't getting smaller. But our systems want to seem to remain the same. You can't. You can't tell me, Madam Speaker, that an aging population in this territory who has the gift from God to have long life, that you only have 15 home care workers employed in social development for the territory of the Virgin Islands. When in my community from King Garden to Windy Hill, I got 30 seniors over 80. Make it make sense. You can't tell me, Madam Speaker, that we went from providing full scholarships for students graduating from high school to get their college degree, to now gain them partial scholarships, when the cost of everything gone up. School becoming more expensive, man, because so where sending me? Where you give me $15,000 for, or $10,000 or $5,000? Where you give me for? Oh, Madam Speaker, let's look at this. Let's look at the healthcare system. Let's look at it this way. You're telling me from 2012, when I was on the Board of Health Services Authority, that we were paying nurses, registered nurses, between 36 and something thousand dollars. 2025, we're still doing the same thing and expecting to build the healthcare system? That's because we're walking backwards from the vision. And here's the thing, we have more money. We have more resources, Madam Speaker. So there's a problem somewhere. And that problem needs to be addressed. Madam Speaker, I believe that we should mandate a national scholarship and skills fund. And that, I believe, can be financed by a fixed percentage of revenues from financial services and tourism to ensure access to tertiary and vocational training. Why I say that, Madam Speaker? What are our pillars? If your pillars are financial services and tourism, and I look in my own family, Madam Speaker, and the people from my village, King Adam, Bruce Bay, Mayors, and through the hill area, Madam Speaker, who built Canil Bay and St. John, Madam Speaker, because of the service industry. Well, we put the people in to serve if tourism is our business. Culinary arts. We're going away from the foundation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would require that our education system include provisions for children with special needs, because no child should be left behind. I believe if we take the bold step and make sure that the government is obliged to maintain these youth apprenticeship programs that directly linking schools with the economic pillars of financial services, tourism, and agriculture and fisheries, Madam Speaker, I believe we can grow the economy. But, Madam Speaker, we talk about three, but we only focus on two. The BVI have land, they have land, they have land, they have land, they have land. They have land, they have land, they have land, they have land. Madam Speaker, in the CRC report, and even in the preamble of the Virgin Islands Constitution Order 2007, it talks about the importance of land to a Virgin Islander. The CRC recommendation reviews the Crown Lands report, which is on page 63 and 65. But in it, I saw no bold guarantees. I saw no bold guarantees that takes us back to this position of ownership. This position that this is ours and we must embrace it, we must develop it, we must preserve it, and we must ensure that it is passed on to the next generation. Madam Speaker, I believe the recommendation should have gone a little bit further to ensure that there's a guarantee, and not Crown land. We had a conversation, you know, not Crown land. Crown land. The Virgin Islands land, Madam Speaker. The allocation of this land should be prioritized for Virgin Islanders with transparent processes and community oversight, Madam Speaker, because since the COI, the Minister of Lands, Deputy Premier said yesterday, I was there for the little 10 months. The oversight of administering Crown lands is now under the governor. He's the one that signed off on it. You could do all the paperwork you want. The final oversight lies with the governor, according to, what is it, what a recommendation, I think, B32 at Eva, B33, I was close, B33. That's what it said. B30. That's what it says, Madam Speaker. And they're holding us to that to us even right now. This is all land. Madam Speaker, the first time land program needs to be returned for the belongers and families entitled to apply for lots tax-free for housing. Create a national land registry that is public and digital, so there's no backroom deals, Madam Speaker. We started to address that, Premier, when I was there with you. Because the land being sold and we getting happy about the what do you call it, the stamp duty. But if you keep selling and selling and selling and selling your land, what you have? Because we're selling it, collecting stamp duty, collecting a bowl of soup, Madam Speaker, but we ain't buying. The government, according to that same piece of legislation, has the first right and refusal to any piece of land that is being sold in the territory. I know when the last time we bought a piece of land from them. So we selling and we selling. You know, sell till they ain't got nothing left. And then, when the government decides to buy land, it's at market value. So we will buy high and try to give to our people low. Who's losing? People. Basic formulas, Madam Speaker. This ain't, it don't take a lot of thinking cells to make it happen. It's just a decision. Madam Speaker, this place should never become, this Virgin Island should never become a place where the people are the tenants in their own land. Never. 67, 78, 2007, and their advancement don't speak to them. But Madam Speaker, if we're not careful and start to pay attention to it, that's where we're going to end up. Madam Speaker, in section 95 of the Complaints Commissioner 110 deals with the Complaint Commissioner, the Director of Public Constitution and 95, and the Register of Interest, Madam Speaker, 112, and then the strengthening of the Public Services and Services Commission. Madam Speaker, these are things that are needed as we go forward in our territory. But we also have to push a little bit further. We can't just depend on what existed before. We got to review some of these processes and some of these systems, Madam Speaker, to modernize them to what's happening in 2025 and beyond. Yes, the laws have been there long before some of us have been born. But Madam Speaker, we need to develop and increase the resources and the capacity in the territory to help with whatever vision is cast for wherever we're going. But Madam Speaker, here's the funny thing. I may want to develop a particular program in a certain industry for children. And I have this grand idea and it could work because I might have traveled to X, Y, and Z and site. And I come back and I say, Premier, I need the money for this and this is what we're doing. Premier says it's a good idea. And when we go to do it, you send the paper forward to Cabinet AG, say, the law of 1962 says that this is what you can do, and in order to do that, you got to update this law, and in order to do that, there's missed opportunity. And by the time we get around to it, Madam Speaker, everybody on to something else. Madam Speaker, this transfer of reserve powers, I want to end here. Advancement 67, Administrator, Chief Minister. 76, Ministers. 07, Premier, Extended Cabinet, House of Assembly. The next step has to be, Madam Speaker. It must be to do what we were trying to do, according to the senior member. That didn't happen. Remove the governor from cabinet. Remove the powers he have to control these ministries. Remove this, Madam Speaker, this illusion that our people have bought into, that it has to be done by the governor. When Honorable Lavity House said, it will be done by us. And we let in, Madam Speaker, the shortfalls and the missteps and the faults that have been experienced, Madam Speaker. We allowing them to tell us this narrative, and our people buy into it, and they see us not trying to fight it to change it, and then this is the way it becomes. So it's more accepted. That's because for someone to understand and appreciate where we would have come from, to know, to hear them utter the words, let it you can take over. Madam Speaker, there's a clear indication that they don't properly understand. The Bible talk about the children of Israel in Egypt. Moses carrying them out. Now, them getting licked, them getting killed, them getting beat. Moses carrying them out. They meet a little roadblock. One of them stumped them, told them, fall down, bust them kneecap. Lord, send me back. Send me back. I said, send me back. Because it's better. But you're on a journey. You're on a journey to go somewhere. Not because you had a mixed step, not because you get chased by a lion and a bear, not because, Madam Speaker, there were distractions in the road that you will turn back and go. Where the Lord Almighty tell you to go from? Madam Speaker, we can't be to that place where we are okay with going back under sole control and authority by the governor of the United Kingdom. We can't be moving forward from 2007. And it's the peoples of the Virgin Islands, Madam Speaker, have to understand, they have to buy into that vision, they have to appreciate this is who we are as a people. This is where our destiny is taking us, Madam Speaker. The Premier read out something yesterday that he did in the Emancipation Service. I listened to him again just like I did because I figured he was going somewhere. I keep telling the Premier. Keep telling my classmate Natalia Wheatley. Second and third farm together. I rather any day of the week. So one day. Any day of the week. Give me twice on Sundays. Give me so one day. Natalia, not so much. Madam Speaker, because he said in his report, in reading the report, there's a document in the United Nations Charter from 1967 that says this is where we should be. 1967. This is 2025, and we're still here talking about where we should go and how we should do it. And the United Kingdom, which is about good governance, transparency, and accountability, holds on to us. Madam Speaker, we got to do better. Madam Speaker, for financial services, fisheries, agriculture, there must be a right established and a guarantee for a right to food security. Those rights that we talk about from in 9 and 35 in the 2007 Constitution, we need to extend these further now. That there must be, that the lands that are in the Virgin Islands, that belong to Virgin Islands, they're set up to produce food. That the fishing grounds in this territory are secured and patrolled, Madam Speaker. And we have the ability to feed ourselves. Because here's it, 2007, 2017, Madam Speaker, we were threatened. The pandemic, again, we were threatened to be cut off from the rest of the world to receive all the things that we imported. We had sustainable development studies, we had this study, we had food bill pass, we had food bill pass here, we have all kind of things pass. But Madam Speaker, where you go to where the land is of Paris and show me the evidence that government, that this government, that we as leaders are serious about food security. You tell me why, Madam Speaker. To this very day, it doesn't have. You notice what I said? They have to have. It doesn't have, Madam Speaker, boats and vessels or they're patrolling our waters to ensure that all fishermen, when they leave this territory, can go out and come in safe with their catch and not be interfered by anybody else. No? With a $400 million budget, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, we have to enshrine in our rights that health care in this Constitution is in place guaranteeing access for the essential and proper management of the elders of these Virgin Islands. We have to ensure that it's funded. Madam Speaker, we can't continue to, from time I come in this house there about, I think it was 2015 or 2016 when NHI came on board. The grant from the government system to Health Service Authority was about $42 million. That's the point. It can't still be the same thing when you have an aging population, where you have more health issues. Madam Speaker, create a national fund for dedicated revenue streams and ensuring pensions, home care services, and dignity for seniors. Mandate, Madam Speaker, resilient health systems. We can't to this day still be talking, we saw the worst of it in 2017 with our hurricanes. We can't still to this day, man, we can be talking where should be our hurricane shelter and where shouldn't be. Every building that we build, Madam Speaker, should be up to a grade, adapted for hurricane impact. And where needs to be community centers and different, let me secure, we know what we've been through. You don't need to get hit over the head twice to know you need to do the right thing. Madam Speaker, I close with this. These Virgin Islands and this road that we're on to go through the negotiations, put together this report for what we want our new constitution to be like. This is not something that we are begging for, Madam Speaker. This is something that we are entitled to. It is what is just, it is what is right, Madam Speaker. And if we're not taking care and strengthening up our systems, Madam Speaker, these Virgin Islands will continue to be judged by how we take care and treat our weak. Madam Speaker, I touched on the UN Charter. I'm just trying to get to the end where the Premier was. We cannot continue to do what we've been doing. We cannot allow any more time to elapse before we make a decision, Madam Speaker, before we cast a vision, and before we ensure that we are rejecting fear and embracing faith. We can't be wondering about what London would think. Too often, we wonder about the loss of financial services or the strain of self-reliance and the risk of independence. Fear is not our inheritance, Madam Speaker. Faith is. Faith in God, faith in each other, faith in the destiny of these Virgin Islands. When our foreparents tilled the rocky soil, they had faith. When they rebuilt after the hurricanes, we had faith. When they sent their children abroad, I was one of them. With a little more than a prayer and a suitcase, they had faith. And it is this faith, Madam Speaker, that must guide us. Madam Speaker, I said it earlier that anyone or anything that gets in the way or threatens and hinders the progress of the people of these Virgin Islands and its development becomes my enemy. Sometimes that enemy could be corruption eating away at trust. Sometimes it's complacency, settling for mediocrity. Sometimes it's colonial inertia, holding powers that belong to the people. Sometimes it's self-doubt that quiets the voice saying that we are too small, we are too weak, and we are too uneasy. But Madam Speaker, whatever form it takes, it must be confronted, for if we do not fight these enemies, then we betray ourselves, but not only ourselves, generations yet unborn. We have to simply discuss where we are, where we came from, and where we are going. The Virgin Islands, Madam Speaker, must rise to meet this moment in history. Because if we don't, we will shrink from it. The Commission of Inquiry report told the world what was wrong with the Virgin Islands, but it didn't tell them what was right. We have to get back to the place that we are telling the story of what is right with us. Madam Speaker, these pillars that I spoke about, from Anegada to Just Funday, every one of us in our respective districts and throughout this territory hear about the strengths. Madam Speaker, I've been to so many funerals, especially this year. But what is more so now captivating and why I'm holding on, I didn't understand why my aunt used to hold on to funeral books, but what now has me holding on to these books is because I am reading the life stories of the individuals that we have lost. And when you pay attention to the things that they went through and they were able to achieve, Madam Speaker, and fight and contribute towards these territories and these Virgin Islands development, then you know there's something to fight for. You know there's something to believe in. You know there's something to hope for, Madam Speaker. You know there's something that more that can be achieved because their lives, Madam Speaker, and our lives have to make and mean a difference. So, Madam Speaker, as I take my seat, I don't see the Virgin Islands as just a territory, but I see it as a nation continuing to build. I see our children being educated freely, dreaming boldly, working skillfully. I see families owning their homes, securing their lands, and planting their gardens. I see fishermen and farmers feeding our people, proud of their contribution. I see institutions strong, corruption punished, transparency normal. I see hospitals equipped, elders cared for, dignity protected. I see roads and ports resilient, ready for the storm and the sun and light. I see a people on these Virgin Islands standing tall in the OECS, in CARICOM, in the Commonwealth, in the UN, not as a dependency, but as a partner. That is the vision, Madam Speaker. That is the future. That is the Virgin Islands that we must fight for. Madam Speaker, may the history and the Virgin Islands, as I call it, her story be told. From the records of those that would debate in this honorable house, that in this generation, at this moment, we chose faith over fear, boldness over timidity, and may we all ensure that we are standing up for the people, that we are willing and able to write and fight, ready to fight on their behalf. Madam Speaker, may it be recorded that when the world asks whether the Virgin Islands were ready for the next stage in our journey, in this house, in this debate, we all answered, Madam Speaker, with one voice. We are ready because history gives us every example through our ancestors why we have what it takes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable. I now recognize the Minister for Health and Social Development, Honorable Vincent Whitley.
Speaker, for this opportunity to lend my voice to this most important debate as we debate the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I never thought I would be standing in this House to do such a task. I have read quite a few of the former constitutional reviews, starting from Proudfoot and even before, and up to the one today. And I must commend the chairman and her team, one members here, for the excellent work that they have done. Now, my colleagues will tease me about all the research I have here on my desk. I didn't go electronic because I wanted people to see that what I'm speaking of is actually exists. But I'm going to make some recommendations and stuff for people to read. I'm one of those persons who believe you should not stumble into your future. I think your future should always be entered into in a strategic way, intentionally, and deliberately. So we're here today to examine just that. This constitutional review, like all others, in my mind, is designed to advance us as a people, take us from where we are at this point in time, and take us on to the next level. And I'm going to try to be as concise as I can. So what I'm going to attempt to do is to follow the recommendations in order from one. If I see they can be combined, I'll combine those two and then skip it. But the Deputy Premier did an excellent job yesterday of really doing a deep dive into all of them. I don't see a need at all to do that. And the Premier also did an excellent job covering the high level of things. And the member for the second just now again did an excellent job of bringing up some particular themes, I guess of particular interest to him and to the future of this country. So I count it a great pleasure to be able to lend my voice. So I will start with number one. And the topic, so if you have you at home, get a little snack, get something to drink. But I don't plan to be here all afternoon. But there are a few things that I must say. So number one, the topic is transparency and public consultation. But the one I want to jump down to, because it's going to be a recurring theme, is D. Every opportunity for public consultation should be utilized during the legislative process, in particular, ensuring the publication of all bills prior to debate. And we've heard this even echoed in our house before. The challenge I have, Madam Speaker, with public consultation is the public don't really show up. Particularly something as important and as hefty as this constitutional review here. Yes, it's a bit thick, but we talk about the future of a country that has been through so much. And in this very report, if you go page 190 of the report, and on page 190, what the commissioners have done, they've indexed every single meeting and how many persons were present. And sometimes it really makes you wonder, what are people thinking? What do they think we are doing with this exercise? Sometimes you see one person, it could be a private meeting, 15, 10, 30. When you see a number like 60, that's almost an anomaly for an exercise as important as the future of this country. You go to some dance hall thing here and the place packed. You wish you had that group inside with these consultations. And I must commend, I've seen some young persons who have taken the consultations in their own hands and held meetings among their peers, because they too recognize enough of them are not interested enough in matters of this nature. Madam Speaker, one of the great accounts of BVI early days, before the house was restored, is captured in Mr. Howard's Penn memoirs. So I have it here, Howard Penn. A must-read for every BVI lander or anybody who called here home. You must read this book to understand from whence we came. And in his book, even before we got the house restored, he would talk about the meetings they would have in the Anglican school room. And never once did he say, never once that the meetings were not well attended. And I'm talking about back in the 30s. Never once did he say the meetings weren't well attended. Even leading up to the March of 1949, you read the account of Theodore Faulkner, it told you the numbers grew night after night. It says in this book that the people came from all over TORTOLA, and they had no cars, donkey, mule, and foot. But the book recalls the people came from all over the BVA because they understood what we were trying to do and the importance of it. I'm reading some more excerpts from this a little later on today. And then when they finally culminated in the March of 1949, history recalls there were over 1,000 persons. 1,000 persons. Some say up to 1,500. At that time, the population was less than 7,000. So that's around 20% of the population showed up with no vehicle, no lantern, it had lantern and so forth, from all over the BVI to come to the square, to come to Rotown to march. In today's numbers, if you talk about 30,000, that's about 6,000 persons. Where in the world could you get 6,000 persons here to do anything of this nature? This tells me that somewhere along the line, the BVI lander has lost its zeal for advancement. There's a certain, in the memo for the second mention, there's a certain complacency among our current population for things of importance to the future of this country. Madam Speaker, to bring my point home, on May 2nd, 2022, there was a march in the BVI. I think it was called a No Direct Rule March. I think it was called that in the media. Anyhow, we were threatened at that time by direct rule, by the UK, and there was a march. We marched down to, I was there, we marched down to the governor's office, John Rankin, and the governor looked out his window, and he kind of smiled. And he made a little funny remark afterwards, like, them people ain't serious. Because there were less than 150 people there. 1949, 1,500, 2002, 150, 10%. It shows that something has gone wrong over time, that we can't see the need to even come together for something as important as that. And after that March, May 2nd, 2022, an article came out in the House of Commons Library, right there. And there's something very interesting here. This came out in August. So the march was May, and this came out in August. And I was going through it some day ago. And in this little thing here, article, is entitled, "The Potential for Direct Rule in the British Virgin Islands." The potential for direct rule. Everybody spoke about it so far. In this thing here, on page 18, it's not a very long article, it says in here, the UK government's position is that any territory that wishes to become independent may seek to do so. But the decision must be based on a clear and constitutionally expressed wish of the territory's population, such as a referendum. The UK undertakes to help a territory achieve this if it wishes. If it wishes. There's a white paper written in 2012, actually 2011, it came out. I don't have it here. Here it is. Here it is. UK white paper, the overseas territories, security, success, and sustainability. And in here it has a little statement that I found very interesting. It said the UK government has a responsibility for the overall good government of the territories and takes a close interest in how territories' governments discharge the functions devolved to them. Those territories which choose to remain British should abide by the same basic standards of good government as in the UK. So somewhere along the line, we send the message to the UK that we want to remain with Britain. We want to remain British. And we must be very careful with these kind of messages. I don't know who say, I didn't say it, but somehow somebody send the message that we choose, the territories which choose to remain British. So I guess that's the impression. Since we ain't saying nothing, but I guess you're happy how you are. Again, on a good read, so 2012 white paper, green paper. I'll say no more on that. But we need to, you'll want it later. Recommendation number 2, junior ministers. And the commissioners, based on their, I had a lot to say. But they first start by saying the position of junior minister should be abolished. Of course, it was qualified afterwards. Because you have to understand in the context of what they're trying to achieve in the House, the checks and balances. Then they go on to talk about the role of junior minister to be clarified, which I agree with. I don't agree with abolishing the junior minister position, but I agree it should be better defined because I think it can be useful. To me, junior ministers can be very useful in helping a minister who can be very busy achieve their agenda. Once it's properly defined, I think it could be a very good thing. Now they kind of put the junior minister thing in with the idea for 6th ministry. But a 6th ministry has implications. And one of the implications it has is it automatically increases the number of persons in the House. And this is an old debate. Because if you're going to increase the number of persons in the House, what are they going to do? And some say this should be at large, some say this should be district, and some say it should all kinds of things came up. I want to make it very clear and bring the message clear of what the people of part of my district have said. That's the people of Enegada. They have said that they wish to remain, to be their own district. And they didn't just start yesterday saying this. There was actually something written and persons have signed it. I haven't gotten my copy as yet. But I know they have expressed that they wish to become their own district for all kinds of reasons. One of the things I want to be very careful with with the wishes of the Enegada people. We shouldn't dismiss what they want. We don't want to create a situation between Enegada and the rest of the BVI, like what happened between Anguilla and St. Kitts. At one time, St. Kitts ruled Anguilla and Nevis. And the Anguillians felt that they would do much better on their own and did not want to be under St. Kitts. It led to the Anguilla Revolution of 1967. And I think went on for like 14 years with Anguilla trying to get from under St. Kitts because they felt it would be better represented by an Anguillian, and it led to a revolution. We don't want that. We don't want to see that here. We don't want Anguilla to have no big revolution against the rest of the DPI. What they are saying, they want a higher level of representation. They haven't had somebody from Enegada in the house since Theodore Faulkner. That's a long time ago. And I could see why they would feel, and we've tried all we can to make them feel as comfortable as they are, to make sure we attend to their needs. And Enegada has a lot. This time I'm talking about between St. Kitts and Anguilla. They had no water, no roads, no electricity, no schools, and St. Kitts was flourishing. Enegada is not like that. Enegada have schools, have school, clinic, fire station, airport, portable water, you name it. But still, the pride of the residents to want to feel, they want to have their own man in Cuba. They want to have their own Enegadian sitting right here next to us, agitating for Enegada. And they feel nobody can do for Enegada what Enegadian can do for Enegada. And there's some logic to it, just like we went through between Anguilla and St. Kitts. I'll talk more about St. Kitts and Anguilla a little later, because there's some lessons to be learned there. They were asking, I remember for the second I was talking about the UK, what the UK doing for us. After the hurricanes, they promised us some body bags and so forth and so forth. And yeah. Anguilla had appealed to the UK to help them get rid of St. Kitts. And to their surprise, and it's not really well known, because we don't have to read our history, Anguilla was fearful that St. Kitts were going to invade them and take them over. Because there were talks out there about St. Kitts going to do this and do that. And Anguilla was very afraid of St. Kitts. But it never happened. St. Kitts never invaded Anguilla, but the UK did. It shocked everybody. Because who you thought was the enemy, who you thought was a friend, ended up being quite the opposite. Read a little piece of it. I found it fascinating. Revolutionary leader, reflection on life, leadership, and politics. J. Ronald Webster, the father of the nation. And his account is on page 101. I found it a strange coincidence. Like you say, College 101, the basic thing. Now on page 101, Madam Speaker, permit me to consult here now and again, with your kind permission. He says, the physical conflict we had been expecting with St. Kitts never materialized, and I was thankful for that. However, nobody in the world would have imagined that we would be facing invading forces of Britain instead. How did this happen? Everybody was shocked. Everybody was shocked. The person they were fearing, my good friend Carvin used to always say, the sheep are afraid of the wolf, while the farmer is eating them. So, I'll read one little piece on page 111 about what happened. We did not have to wait long for the British invasion. Operation Sheepskin came at 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday, March 19. 330 paratroopers and Marines landed on the island. The troops from HMS Minerva disembarked at Crocus Bay, and those from HMS Rothsay came ashore at Road Bay. At the same time, 40 policemen drawn from the Special Patrol groups in London and paratroopers landed at the airstrip, while men from the parachute regiment with support vehicles and other equipment jumped from a giant Hercules aircraft. The invading forces quickly dug in, mounted machine guns, established control points along the roads, stopping, searching, and questioned everyone. Ronald Webster. The people they thought were their saviors had invaded them. We must be careful who we look to for help. Webster always said it was his faith in God, that pulled him through. Yes, who are you afraid of? The shepherd or the wolf? Where the wolf goes hungry, the shepherd is having lamb chops. Number 3, the bicameral system of bicameralism. That's because I'm very passionate about bicameralism, even though I understand the drawbacks. And for those who might not understand the difference, the House of Assembly in the BVI is monocameralism. Unicameral, sorry. The correct word is unicameral. You only have one chamber. With a bicameral system, you have 2 chambers. The upper house and lower house, we sometimes call them. Commissioner said there should be no change to the Constitution to provide for a bicameral house at this time. And I hope the intention is that it's understood that it must come at some point in time. At this time, I'm not sure, I don't like to use terms like at this time. Like I said, I like to be strategic, intentional, and deliberate. When is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? Because in my mind, it's the clearest indicator that you plan to move on from your current status. Your clearest indicator is a bicameral house. It allows for a level of checks and balances that persons often complain about persons say out there, and everyone have seen it. We need to fight opposition because they're holding the government accountable. I have heard that. A bicameral system allows for better checks and balances of certain things, whatever it is we choose to do. Now, Plato, in his book called Plato's Republic, he had a little section in there about politics and who gets into politics. And he always said, Plato was a Greek philosopher. Sure, you want to test me? You want to test me today? And he had a section in there that said educated people, aristocrats, only get involved with politics for fear of rule by lesser men. There's a whole thing, the whole section about that. For fear of rule by lesser men. Now, the game of politics is a complicated one, very complicated. This house only holds 13 members. And sometimes you have a lot of persons running, trying to get into this house. The only 13 are allowed in here. What a bicameral system does, it lets you not get named by election, but by appointment. And it's done various ways in the various countries. Every single Caribbean country who are independent now has a bicameral system. Antigua, Barbuda, Grenada, Jamaica, St. Lucia, TNT. Only Bermuda in the north has a bicameral system. Bicameral. So 11 appointed, and I think 34 or something like that. 11 appointed, 36 elected. Now the reason why I like the bicameral system, and the mechanics of it you'll have to work out, is I believe that for any society to truly get its true potential, which is true potential, it must be all-inclusive. Young people, your seniors, your handicapped persons or differently able persons and so forth, they have something to offer, and also the intellectuals. The Deputy Premier, he said very diplomatically in his presentation about the bicameral system, and he doesn't like the idea of anybody being appointed. The fact remains that some persons in this territory with extraordinary intellect not willing to do what it takes to sit down in here. They're not willing to do what it takes when it sits to get inside here. Those persons can be afforded opportunity to contribute to the development of this country by appointing them. And we work together. One day I asked the AG here, about if she would ever run for office. She said to me, no, sir, getting elected is a skill. Me ain't think I had it. No, but she has a fact. Some people just ain't willing to do what it takes to come in here. It is campaigning, it is hard work, it's persuading people. It is hard work. And so some people, the only way they're going to get in here is if you appoint them. I have to call no name. And so I think the idea of referendum, I think we bring a bigger pool into this house to help us take this country forward. I'm going fast. I am number 4 already. I'm moving on, man, because I say I ain't repeating what everybody say, going over the same thing. I'm going to shoot this thing pass or clap. The use of a referendum. There should be no amendment to the Constitution to provide for the introduction of people-initiated referendum at this time, as there is not yet sufficient experience with people-initiated referendum in the OTs. We don't have to be the last, we could be the first sometime, because I think a referendum could be a very useful tool. And the way I envision it working is certain issues can be, you can take the parties out of it if you let the population vote on it. So when you go vote for your representative in your at-large, you put a particular issue to get the public's opinion on it. So apart from the candidates, you also vote on particular issues. So when the time comes, and you see, well, 80% of the persons want me back in the house, it's the people talking. Whatever the issue is, whether it could be, whatever the issue is, you put a particular issue on the ballot paper along with the ballots, and let the people vote on the issue. That way it takes the politics out of it. You know exactly what the people want. Now, how you go about choosing a particular topic, I don't know. But I guess whatever the issue or the controversies of the day, the people will have a voice in it. Term limit for the Premier, again, the Deputy Premier will ensure this at length. I think our population here is so small, it will, I could see posing a challenge. Because even in the states where you have 300 million people, sometimes they have challenges finding people to solve. In Trump is now talking about a total term. We'll see where that goes. But I think it can be, I think term limits is something that all people instinctively handles. If they represent doing a good job, they go to the poll and they deal with it. It's just that simple. But I know it came from, so I'm going to leave it. Move it right along. Skip that one, skip that one, skip that one. The recollection of the Premier and revision of the at-large system. I think most persons understood how the at-large system came into being. The initial task of I believe, of the architects, the UK, of the at-large system, is these 4 persons were supposed to be independent. That was their thinking. These persons should not be affiliated with any party. It was a way to get rid of the Bosnian party, I think it was then. And it did create quite a situation with the then Chief Minister, Honorable Ladley, because he saw the writing on the wall. And he was very, very, very concerned about it. This Idris, rest of soul, called him one day and said to him, they didn't say you couldn't have 4. And that opened his eyes, and that's when he went and said, well, the Bosnian party will feed 4 too, because it didn't say you couldn't do it. And when he realized he could actually do that. But the question I have, and again, is nothing against no at-large in this house. I never thought the system has really worked. I cannot say I've seen extra things happening in BVI because of an at-large system. Some personalities, yes, but I cannot say the system itself. And this is nothing against anybody. I'm just saying, I don't think the system itself has done what the UK thought it would do. We've made it work to the best that we can do. But I don't think it's sort of purpose they thought it would. What it did was increase the cost of the house, but instead of that, I'm not sure. I'm on number 12, Patron. Not 12. Can I slow down there, you know? Fixed 2.9% right now. 12, fixed House of Assembly schedule. I could understand the advantages of it. It's just impractical to me. It's too dynamic a world to say you're meeting on this day and that, day like that, all for a whole year. There are too many things happen. Making the inquiries and hearings live, not sure about that. Direct voting of ministers. At the front you said you want the premier to be at large, but not ministers. You want them voting for the premier directly, but not the ministers. I could see this causing some confusion, where somebody could run as minister for lands. It's not, that's not our culture really. I'm saying a minister for whatever subject you choose. Somebody could do that and then you vote. I think what they're trying to do is like in the States, where you vote for the president as a president, and then whoever he meets when he gets in there, Democrat or Republican, whatever, he has to work with them. But I think in our system, it will be tricky because we have 4 parties that could possibly have people. So you could have a premier who you vote for, but then the House is of 4 different parties, and everything is a stalemate and the country goes nowhere. It's a possibility. And so I would kind of handle those things there. Increase number of ministers. Again, I think it's a good thing. As the world gets more and more complicated and people need to focus more, having an extra minister. And I think they actually, in the 2005 report, I think they did say what that fifth, the extra minister should be. Let's go find the page quickly. Anyway, they did say at one point in time, when you increase the ministers, what those extra ministers should be. What I'm talking about was junior ministers, actually. Okay, let's skip contractor general, let's skip that. Powers to be resolved for the governor. Huh? I'll say this, I'm not going to say a whole lot about this. You know why? Because the UK has made it so clear that as long as you're a dependent territory, I have a governor there. And the reason being because they use this word called contingent liability. As long as we don't go independent, and I'm saying we should go, as long as we don't go independent, the UK considers us a contingent liability. And the only security, oh, here is it. So in the 2005 Constitutional Review, this came up. It's on page 89. And next must read again, 2003 Constitutional Review. And it says on 8.33, there was no objections to the provision for the governor's reserved powers. In fact, the members of the Legislative Council did not make any comment about the governor's reserved powers as outlined in section 44. The Commission is very mindful of the UK's responsibility with respect to contingent financial liabilities. And the view that such a responsibility will mean there should be regard for reserved powers. What is that? Clear and simple. As long as you ain't independent, you're going to have a governor with powers to cover this contingent liability. Jump high, jump low. Anything you do and you can't pay, the UK say, I have to pay. And how you're going to do that is through the governor, through those reserve powers. So if you don't want the governor to have no reserve powers, this is clear. Go independent. You can tell me this. As long as you are an overseas territory, you are a contingent financial liability to the UK. Well, you're talking potential here. It can happen, and they ain't taking a chance. The 2003 Constitution covered that. Shona, yeah, So you're watching me a little funny. So, yes, we're going to advance, but we ain't going to get to zero. Appointment or election of speaker, I think we should continue the way it is. The speaker comes in and the ruling party gets to decide who sits up there in the chair. I'm all the way now, Petrona, on next steps towards self-determination. Sorry, not speaker. I'm all the way in 31. Next steps towards self-determination. Now, Speaker, I really want to talk about our next steps towards self-determination. This is a topic that's very, very dear to me. I'm very passionate about it. And I think it should be so to all of us. Madam Speaker, we have a little funny habit here in the BVI. Let me find the paper. We like to tell dead men stories. After you're dead, it's all kind of thing you say then. Not while you're living. But when you're dead, we let's like to talk about what the dead people say. So I can just do a little reflection on what some dead people say. And I'm going to refer to this book here. This is a must read. This is a must read. It's a 25 years of ministerial government. It's a reflection. This book, 25 years of ministerial government, 1967 to 1992, is a must read for anybody living in the BVI. It's just simply a must read. And of course, we have the follow-up book to it, in Parliamentary Representation, which is 50 years of ministerial government. This one is 25. And this year, we're, of course, celebrating 75 years of the restoration of the house, coming up soon. So, and some reflections here from this first book. One of the dead people in. The first one I'm going to go to is Macquillan Tadman, CBEQC. He says, a small little quote from him, "The success of the system was such that by 1959, some of the elected members were clamoring for the BVI to move to a full ministerial system." And he was reflecting on the fact that in 1950, the house had been restored. 9 years later, the man ready to fly. Because it was on the wall. Let's move forward. It is on record that the majority of the members of the Legislative Council and general public in the BVI did not consider the time was right for such a move, that many people feared that a ministerial system might lead to dictatorial powers. In any event, this was the message conveyed to London, and there, with the help of the last holder of the office of Governor of the Leeward Islands, Sir Alexander Williams, this attempt to move the BVI forward politically was aborted. By action that spoke louder than words, the BVI has seen it fit to proclaim to the world. 1959. I wasn't even born yet. I wasn't even a thought yet. Look, it's important. He finishes, "My very chains and I grew friends. So much a long acquaintance tends to make us what we are." You be careful with these things here. I want to read Lavitune. We're going to this book here. We're going to this book here. What Lavity said. I want to remind persons, this was said not last week, 33 years ago. This was said 33 years. You were born 33 years ago? You were a toddler. These are the words of another dead hero. We honor him every year, all kind of accolades. The political status for most of our Caribbean neighbors have evolved from ministerial government to associated statehood to independence. The British government is no longer granting the middle status associated statehood. And so, the next step for the BVI must be independence. This is Lavity Stout, I'm reading it 33 years ago, 1992. There is no getting away from this, and we must therefore start now. to set the bedrock on which the future political arrangement will be laid. I look forward to having an opportunity to help set a bedrock for the future political advancement of the country. The chief concern in setting the tone for success at the next stage is that our people be prepared to meet the challenges which independence will generate. When we move into independence, it means we will be embracing a role that is going to be of our own responsibility, and we must be ready to assume that role. It is for this reason that I am so keen on the development of tertiary education and increase and improvement in the training of our people. We must therefore be thinking seriously about forward planning so that we will be ready for the next stage of our political development. Honorable Levity. So that wasn't last week, by the way. He died in 95. This was 1992. This is 1992 he wrote those words. You are one? So we talk about education today. There's a reason why we have, the BVA today has the most educated people in its history. And this is where it came from. And this was the reason for it. This was the reason here. Because Levity, his vision, saw we must go independent, and the only way to get there is through education. His legacy was education. One of them. I remember hearing Eddie Parsons talking about all these people setting the primary school exam. When you look, only 20 get in. You remember for the second, sat the exam out twice before he finally get in. Because they said only 20 persons could have get in. And most of those 20, if that all, came from the Rotown area. So Levity himself was a victim of the system. Now, as he made sure that we didn't fall in that trap, he made education a priority. With independence in mind, Madam Speaker. Independence. What's going on? Lewis Walters, this was 33 years ago too. At a 50th anniversary in the year 2017, which of you in the territory will be leading this country, writing the messages for others to read, or organizing the activities on a much grander and significant scale? It is now time for our youth to awaken to the future realities and prepare for this day and beyond. Opportunities for education, participation, and a fuller understanding of the British Virginians is within your grasp, and what you do today will affect your tomorrow. That was Lewis Walters. Another voice from the grave. Terence B. Lepson. Terence B. Lepson. We have accomplished much, but there's much more to be done. We now look to the future as we face yet another challenge. The challenge to prepare ourselves to take full control of our own affairs politically. Yeah, I make this thing up. This is history. He goes on, one of my favorites, Cyril B. Romney. He says, on a political front, there remains much to be done. The achievement of ministerial government is not enough. It is merely the beginning of a long and rocky road to full self-determination, which can only be achieved with eventual political independence. It is unfortunate that our limited experience of the global movement from colonialism to self-determination infers a questionable connotation of this ultimate state, so graphically highlighted by the communications media, but their own agenda. There is no need for serious coordinated efforts to protect the natural rights. There is need for serious coordinated efforts to protect the natural rights of the native people against business incursions from abroad. But it is in the arena of business that lie the best opportunities for permanently entrenching a strong local presence. Okay, going on. Michael O'Neill. On one means of surmounting these obstacles, the Legislative Council, I said that man here. Okay, so I'll go to one of my favorite guys, Howard R. Penn OBE. Let's get that one. That one already. I'll go to my father-in-law. We feel bad up there. Hear me reading everybody. Page 50. Yeah, I got it. This is from Honorable R.T. O'Neill, OBE. Honorable R.T. O'Neill, again from 1992. Steering the territory during these 25 years was not always easy, but by hard work and dedication, there are the signs of success. The fate of our country is now in our hands, and although we are not fully independent, the partnership with the United Kingdom government could well help us to achieve whatever political status the majority of us would like. And they have said that too. You want to do what you want? We're here to help you. Okay, enough of the dead people. I want to end this section here, I believe, with a living person. And that living person is actually in this honorable house today. She's right behind me, to my left. Honorable Lana Smith. Back in 1992, 33 years ago, she was asked to give a little insight on how things are going to go in the BVI, in the future. Living. So we're back to living people now, so you can listen to her. But what she is saying is so important to me. She says, this is 23 years ago. It is crucial that our people, therefore, young and old, be thoroughly educated about the options available to them for political growth. Economically and socially, the BVA has performed remarkably well, but politically and more specifically, political education has fallen somewhat short. It is crucial that we not only rely on our political leaders to carry out this function, not only us in here, but that other members of the community, indeed the Office of Information and Public Relations, hold symposiums, guest lecture series, obtain public feedback and the like. The time to do so, ladies and gentlemen, is now. If you had only listened to her, maybe because she wasn't there, I don't know. If you had only listened to her. So, I don't repeat this. This is 33 years ago that Lana said that. So I can come now to the 2003, the one we debate now. The one we debate now. Am I right one? Oh, that's right. Because in this year, which is just 2 years ago, under next steps, it says, 312 on page 99. The need for greater education on the topic of self-determination was the 5th highest recurring theme and the recommendation recorded by the chairman, commission. Why 33 years later you saying the same thing? That we need more education? Lana said 33 years ago in 1992. Why are we, this now, saying the very same thing, we need more education? More education on what? More education on what? All information we need are right here in these books I have on this desk here. Anything you need to know about where we came from, where we are, where we need to go, and how to get there. Everything is right here in these books here. It's just for us to take the time and read these things. Even the dead people have no way of saying. Speaker, I don't think there's ever been a member who ever sat in this honorable house that didn't think that self-determination and independence was the way for the BVI. What they might disagree on is when. But not one person who ever sat in here thought the way we are now is where we are to end up. If I'm wrong, tell me. I never heard one in a retro bunch of them a while ago, and I could do a whole lot more. But I don't think one person ever sat in there didn't think this was the way to go. Some would say, well, we can't go independent before we fix the water problem. You can't go independent until health care is fixed. You can't go independent until. I want to remind my colleagues that those countries that are now independent, when they went independent, they had nothing what we have now. They had absolutely nothing of what we have now. Take for example of Great Jamaica, 91% illiterate, meaning only 9 out of 100 persons could read. 9. They had no health care, they had no infrastructure. That didn't stop them, because they can't put conditions like that on the fate of our people. You cannot do it. This is a state of mind. Madam Speaker, I read some things there from 33 years ago. And I want to know, I want an honest answer. These voices I read a while ago, Madam Speaker, they haunt me. These voices from the grave, they haunt me. Because they speak to us not being here at this point in time. It is state. They spoke to us being at a different place. We have fallen asleep, Madam Speaker. We have lost that heat in our blood. Our blood has cooled off. We're not hungry for change and advancement anymore. You could become complacent. As we are here debate now, how many youth are actually listening? How many of the young people that book was speaking to them are listening to us now? Because this here was necessarily written for us. It was written for the young persons. What they should have been prepared for. This is 33 years later that we are talking about this here. Are they tuned in now? Are they looking at the books that I'm speaking about? Are you tuned in to what you should be doing? The future that we are building, the decision we are going to make today, will affect us in varying degrees. But you young people out there now, what we are discussing today will directly affect you. Directly affect you. It's an expectation of you. It's a long expectation of you, what your role is to be. We're depending on you to move this country forward. There's only so far we can take it. Just like Moses, he got him out of Egypt through the desert, couldn't enter the promised land. There's only so far you can go. We need all of the young people to unlock their full potential to move this country forward. Madam Speaker, somebody texted me a while ago and said, you're talking about Constitution. I'm interested in no Constitution. I'm interested in some money talk. I'm interested in no Constitution today. Madam Speaker, I want young person to understand that money and politics, they go hand in hand. Now I'm going to refer you to a conversation from yesteryear. Now, Speaker, permit me to read a little section from H.R. Penn. It ain't too long, but it's going to bring the point home. In 1938, Mr. Hope Stevens, and you heard the name before, a native of Tortola, returned from the USA, where he had studied and became a lawyer. When he saw the depressed condition of the islands, both economically and politically, he decided to try to do something about it. One night, he and David G. Fonseca, together with Charlie Georges and Jose O'Neill, came into my shop, and Mr. Stevens told me that they proposed to start an organization to be called a civic league. We should send a petition to the Secretary of State for the Colonies, asking for an elected legislative council for the British Virgin Islands. We finally got it in 1950, but it started in 1938. Mr. Stevens asked if I would like to join them, but on the occasion I declined, saying that it was the economic improvement of the BVI, not politics, that interested me. And we hear this a lot. Not interested in politics, we're interested in money. I'm interested in this here. However, they returned the following night, and Mr. Hope said to me, Penn, I have been thinking over what you said to me last night, that your desire is for economic improvement for this country. And I said to you that if we can get a legislative council, then economic improvements will follow from that. I replied that if he really believed that was so, I would join him. The civic league was set up. The rest is history. The politics and economics of the country, they go together. Madam Speaker, in 1953, the BVI made a decision that would change our course forever. That is, it went against all common sense, as a matter of fact. The decision made then. We decided not to join the West Indies Federation. That lasted a little while, from 58 to 62. It defied common sense not to join. And Mr. Penn, on one of the trips, after it happened, described a conversation with a lady about this decision. He says, shortly after we had taken the decision not to join the Federation, I went to Antigua to attend a meeting in my capacity as BVI member of the General Legislative Council. As customary, I paid a visit to Ms. Gertrude O'Neill of the BVI, who was then operating a drugstore in Antigua. And she asked me, how could we possibly have decided to stay out of the Federation and cut ourselves off from the rest of the West Indies? She added that she did not know what was to become of the poor BVI and its people. I told her, this is Mr. Penn speaking. I told her to wait and see. Wait and see the wisdom of our decision of taking our future into our own hands. That's what you were saying. And Madam Speaker, today, there's where we are right now. That's exactly where we are right now, trying to get our future into our own hands. Madam Speaker, in 2034, that's 9 years from now, 9 years, we'll be celebrating 200 years of emancipation from slavery. Madam Speaker, let me repeat that. 9 years from now, Arnold Smith, 9 years from now, we'll be celebrating 200 years of emancipation from slavery. And I'm saying it would be a good gift to our people that we don't be in the state we are now. That should be a benchmark for us to say, after 200 years, here is where we are. And we should be proud to say where we are 9 years from now. It should be a big celebration 9 years from now on an amazing announcement by the then Premier of this country about the BVI status. That there is my hope that that announcement will be one of great big ground shaking. Because we are proud, resilient, educated people. And I think that should be, Honorable Fraser, a monumental declaration on that day. Yes, remember this date, Premier. I want to read on 9 years from now, 2034. I went to this book now. Assessment of Self-Governance Sufficiency in Conformity with Internationally Recognized Standards by Carlyle G. Corbin. Again, another must read for persons who plan to live in a BVI and understand where we came from. Let me make sure I find the page here. This reporter was studying the BVI and its readiness to move on. Page 140, Dr. Carlyle Corbin. On page 140 at the bottom, it says, it is a conclusion of the present assessment that the Virgin Islands has advanced in its preparation for self-governance through the development of political and administrative capacity to govern itself successfully. Claim he did a study, he did a report, he gave us a conclusion. This is page 140. But yeah, it's not last year, or 2 years ago. It's a very recent thing. 30th June 2021. Sorry, 30th June 2021. The assessment says it is a conclusion of the present assessment that the Virgin Islands has advanced in its preparation for self-governance through the development of political and administrative capacity to govern itself successfully. It's only for us to believe that, you know. We believe what the COI say. A lot of people did. They corrupt, did this, they incompetent, did that. But this report that was carefully done by a man of international renown has said, you're ready. We are ready. The foundation has been set by our forefathers. Let us honor the vision that they had for this country. Madam Speaker, we're done actually. Because like I said, the Deputy Premier and then the Premier, Honorable Turnbull, all those guys who went before me have done an excellent job of going through that one. The word self-determination should not scare us. It should not scare us. It simply means we're going to do for ourselves. It means we have to work harder. Judge-only trials, I think, is something that can probably work in very specific cases. Crown lands, another 136. Now, I plan to go much further than 36. We have done a lot of work in the areas of Crown land, getting lands to our people, but the issue of lands is a complicated one. And the term Crown lands in and of itself kind of tells you it belongs to the UK. It belongs to the king. So it's called the crown, and of course the governor. And that's where the governor signs off on it, because he's giving you. Now, just say this about land and land ownership. It's a highly misunderstood concept of land ownership. When you go to land registry and they give you a deed, they really haven't given you the land, you know. What they have done is give you legal access to a prescribed area. They have given you legal access to a prescribed area we call a deed. So you say it is mine. No, you have access to it. I ain't gonna say much on that. Let's get it ready. Cabinet. The issue of the government cabinet, again, is not one I'm going to necessarily fight hard about, because if you're a governor of the cabinet, go independent. If you don't do that, you're going to admit a battle why he should be in there, and he's there for one simple reason: to let them know firsthand where he's trying to go. That was a taking notes and thing. God knows what it is. So if you really want to move forward, you have to take a different position. As long as he in there, the Constitution is going to make sure that he's present. Most countries right now have moved to 5-year terms. I think we're one of the last countries still with a 4-year term. And that's the reality is, it's very challenging to get things done in 4 years. I think the last one to do it was TCI last year, I think it was. This year. In TCI this year. This is the first government with a 4-year term. So in most independent countries, they do 5-year terms, St. Vincent Island. I don't necessarily have a problem with a 5-year term. So, Madam Speaker, I don't think I need to go much further than that, more than to encourage our people, particularly our young people, to get that passion to learn our history, normal history as well as our political history, and to get yourself in your rightful place to take this country to the next step. We have two members here, Honorable Skelton and Alton Fraser, who this is their second time debating a constitutional review. This is their second time doing it. And I learned heavily on their experience, and what they have experienced and gone through, and where we need to go in terms of leading this country. So, Madam Speaker, again, young people, get in tune. Your turn is next. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, let's just take a brief recess. This House now resumes the sitting. Members, at this time, we will recess until Monday, the 22nd, is it? No, we're gonna cut off. So we will return on Monday at 10 a.m. House is in recess until then.